Welcome back to A Little Bit of Cheese, your daily bite-sized Wisconsin sports podcast. I'm your host, Cody Depius. I want to thank you for being here with us on this Monday. It is NFL Monday, the third week of the NFL, but today, no Sam. He had some stuff going on today, so I'm going to do a little bit of heavy lifting today. That's all right. We pushed our workout to later in the day, so we can do a little bit of lifting here. Then I can do some lifting later. But all jokes aside, it was a really exciting weekend once again. Green Bay at the top, a 30-14 win over Tennessee. This is Malik Willis's second start, and the second start that you saw him be essentially perfect. It was another great performance overall. The team, top to bottom, all three phases, incredible. This was one of the more fun Packer games I can remember in the past. Of course, we had some really fun ones last year, but the team coming in, I believe they were underdogs, we talked about last week against this Tennessee team. Tennessee looked really good defensively the first couple weeks of the season. They really stifled the Bears and Caleb Williams, which I thought that unit was going to be a little bit better than they have been playing so far this year. I didn't think Green Bay was going to be able to move the ball even remotely close to how they did. But the numbers are just staggering here for Malik Willis. 13 for 19, 202 passing yards, one passing touchdown. And then on the ground, he had 73 rushing yards and one rushing touchdown. So 275 yards of offense for a backup quarterback that a month ago was on the roster of the team that he just kicked the crap out of. So, as awesome as this is for Packer fans, this is even cooler, I think, for Malik Willis to just go in and just beat the roster, and he beat them good. He was able to do it. You just saw the numbers on the ground, in the air. He had 120.9 passer rating in this game. Was just really good. I think he took one sack, and that was the one negative play that I can really give him. But other than that, he was just able to do it. The read option, he's able to get that rushing touchdown off of that. Got a passing touchdown that went to Emmanuel Wilson. That is Emmanuel Wilson's first NFL touchdown, so congratulations to him. He had a solid day as well. Had 12 carries for 50 yards, 2 receptions for 35 yards, and then, of course, the one touchdown there on a 30-yard screen pass from Malik Willis. Josh Jacobs, not that great of a day. We'll talk about that a little bit. 14 carries, 43 yards, not great, but when you combine it with what Wilson was able to do on the ground and what Willis was able to do on the ground, it was overall a great day for the offense. Christian Watson had some really nice plays, got over 65 yards. Jaden Reed got in on a couple, but the offense, it was really, really awesome to see. For the second week in a row, you saw Matt LaFleur's magic, where you have a guy that came in just recently, just learning the playbook. You saw him open it up even a little bit more than we expected last week, and you saw Willis be really, really successful in the game plan that Matt LaFleur curated for him. And then in another week playing against a solid Tennessee defense, a defense that looked almost unstoppable so far, where you knew it was going to be tough to run between the tackles. And I think that's one of the big reasons as to why Josh Jacobs' numbers aren't close to what he had earlier this season. But it was just overall really, really awesome. You saw Willis drop back and convert on a couple of third downs down the field with both his arm and his legs. He looked like a starting quarterback. He really did. You could have watched this game, not have any context around it, and you would have thought that Malik Willis was a young kid that was drafted highly and highly touted, maybe didn't have a lot of experience in the NFL, but that he had a really solid game plan that was curated for him. And that's kind of the case here. But Will Levis was the young hot shot drafted in the second round after they had already drafted Malik Willis. That he was supposed to have the game that Malik Willis did. But that was not the case. Green Bay's defense made him look silly. Will Levis has had a really, really rough first 3 games of this season. This is the first full year that he is going to be the starter here for Tennessee. And yesterday he just got beat in. The defense for Green Bay, 8 sacks, 2 interceptions, and a fumble recovery. So 3 more turnovers from Will Levis. And the Green Bay defense, they have already tied their season total for interceptions that they had last year, which was 7. It is week 3. That is how bad Joe Barry's defense was and how much of a difference just a scheme and a mindset can bring to a defense. Xavier McKinney already has 3 interceptions. He is bringing to the table an effect to a defense that kind of resembles, and I brought it up before, it was a little bit of the expectation. He doesn't have the accolades yet, but Xavier McKinney is the type of player that can bring a type of Charles Woodson leadership and playmaking ability to a defense. And he has shown that so far through 3 weeks for Green Bay. I think he's going to end up being one of the most valuable free agent signings of maybe even the decade. Like, I'm really speaking very highly of him, but that's how well he's played. I think he's really that good of a player, and he's making everyone around him a little bit better. Jeff Hafley, the scheme, it showed up to perfection. Like, this game from top to bottom, there's not a lot to pick on. I don't really have a whole lot to say on the negative side. I could pick out individual performances or individual plays and say, yeah, this guy needs to play better in this situation. But when you look at a game from the outside, watching in entirety, it was incredible. 8 sacks. And we called him out a little bit last week. We said, hey, the first 2 weeks of the season, Green Bay hasn't really brought the pressure. We don't know what's going on here. Why is this defense not getting the quarterback? You have the names there. You have the high pedigree, the high draft picks. All these guys, they're supposed to be developing here. They're supposed to be stepping into the superstar role like a Rashawn Gary or a Lucas Van Ness or a Devontae Wyatt. Devontae Wyatt yesterday, 2 sacks. This guy is scary. Like he is making quarterbacks shake in their boots right now. Watching Devontae Wyatt tape, he's chasing guys down. He's over 300 pounds, and boy, can he move. He is a scary, scary man when he gets to the backfield. That first-round pick from Green Bay a couple years ago really, really paying off here. And then it's awesome to see a team that went from one of the least competent defensive schemes last year to now looking like you can have a top 10 defense. If you provide Matt LaFleur and what they're able to do with a top 10 defense, the rest of the NFL here, watching even these 2 games with Malik Willis, they have to be very scared. Last year, if Green Bay had a competent defensive coordinator, and it was there anyway, you have a real shot at a Super Bowl championship. This is really, really exciting stuff. And I hate getting ahead of myself here because we can go in and say that everything is all played out, everything's all written out. This team can go as the sky's the limit. It really is. And we'll see where things continue. We'll see if guys stay healthy. We'll see if other teams start to adjust, which they always end up doing. But this is a very fun defense to watch, and I think that's the most exciting thing that you're getting here out of this early part of the season. Of course, that first game against Philadelphia, they didn't look great. You had a bunch of missed tackles, gave up a whole bunch of yards. Saquon Barkley looked like he could have done anything he wanted to that day, and he really did. But I think a lot of that had to do with the playing conditions. You saw the exact same thing on the other side for Philadelphia. And Philadelphia's defense, they played one heck of a game against New Orleans yesterday. That got them a low-scoring win, which both those defenses in week 1 did not look good. But now you see the Green Bay defense play against a Anthony Richardson-led Colts and a Will Levis-led Titans. Yes, it's not the high pedigree offenses that you're going to need to stop in the playoffs, but the defenses, they just look good. The coverage has been spectacular. Jair Alexander had a pick 6. That was a very, very pretty play. If you have not watched a Jair Alexander pick 6, it was a little screen route to DeAndre Hopkins, who at one time was the greatest wide receiver in the NFL, where Jair was sitting back about 6 yards. He knew exactly what play was coming, and he read it like a book. He saw Levis turn, fire, and before Levis even let the ball go, Jair was already in his break, and he met the ball perfectly, caught it in stride, and didn't have anyone within 10 yards of him when he crossed the goal line into the end zone. That That was a me jump out of my reclining chair, jump up, Ja Money kind of interception. That was a fun play, vintage Jair Alexander, and he just looks good. And this team's having fun. Like you saw their little interception celebration. Like when the defense gets together and they're planning their own turnover celebrations, you feel like things are going right. I don't like, of course, I'm sure all these teams go out and plan it, but to see it actually executed because you're able to score on a big turnover or you caused a big turnover, which, like I said, last year you only had 7 interceptions the entire season. That is pitiful. Now you match that number through 3 games this year. It doesn't matter what quarterbacks you played or how bad the offenses were that you played. Like that just shows you the difference. Things are going well. And when it comes to the Josh Jacobs thing, 14 carries, 43 yards, the number, it's just above a 3.0 yard per carry average, which is, it's pretty bad. But for a 1-game basis, I mean, you kind of just look at it. You see what the other guys are able to do around him. Wilson, they were working a lot more outside the tackle. Of course, Willis is able to take off when it would be 3rd and medium or whatnot, or a designed read option. That's how he got his rushing touchdown. When they were able to work outside, Green Bay was able to get the yards. They didn't do a whole lot of that with Jacobs. They tried to go up the middle, and Tennessee's interior defensive line and middle linebackers are very solid at stopping the run. Probably their interior for run stopping is probably top 5 in the NFL. I think you can say that. So you don't have to worry about it. I think they're not going to continue to be this way. You like to see that they continue to feed him regardless of the lack of production through a couple of a play span there. But 14 carries, 43 yards, much different than what you saw last week. But you saw him carry his ball 32 times because Indianapolis showed time and time again that they could not stop him. And Malik Willis is just able to do a lot. But what I'll say about Emmanuel Wilson, who was not expected to really even be on the roster, like when we were in training camp and going through preseason and whatnot. You looked at him as a good running back who was undrafted. He had a really good preseason last year. The team really liked him on the practice squad, and he just had 3 guys ahead of him that were solid, which is Josh Jacobs, A.J. Dillon, and Marshawn Lloyd. And, of course, A.J. Dillon out for the season with a stinger. That bumps Wilson up to an RB3. And now with Marshawn Lloyd going on IR for at least a month, that brings Emmanuel Wilson up to running back 2. And he looked like a really solid second running back yesterday. Once again, 50 yards rushing, 35 yards receiving. He had the screen pass he took into the end zone for a touchdown. He runs very hard. I'm excited to see where his career improves here. Like, this might be a peak for what you see for Emmanuel Wilson, but this is a guy who has worked really hard, had a lot of people doubt him throughout the course of his career, but now he's getting a little bit of an opportunity, and he's shining with it. And last year, that's what it was too. As an undrafted rookie, you didn't even know who Emmanuel Wilson was until he blasted an 80-yard rushing touchdown in the 3rd quarter of a preseason game. You're like, oh, this kid can kind of run. He's an exciting player. He's a home run hitter. And the team continued to bring in more talent at the running back position where you didn't think he was going to get an opportunity, but now he does. It's presenting itself, and he is presenting himself as a very, very capable backup running back. So top to bottom, Packers stomp Tennessee. Green Bay will be taking on Minnesota next week. I am going to try to get us another special guest. We'll try to talk with them later in this week to try to prep you for that game. But to transition there, Minnesota has really surprised me, like in a very scary way here. They look great once again. They beat Houston, who is expected. A lot of people have them as Super Bowl contenders for this year with C.J. Stroud. Second-year quarterback, had a very good season as a rookie. He had led the team 2-0 in the first 2 weeks. The defense for Houston looked really solid. And they're playing a Minnesota team who I had at the beginning of the season with only 5 wins. My expectations were very low. I knew there was talent there. I didn't know how things were going to be executed on the defensive side of the ball, which I will say it right now. I was an idiot for doubting Brian Flores, who is the defensive coordinator for Minnesota. He is He is one of the greatest defensive minds in football. I said that quote last week after the Vikings went and beat San Francisco, who is also a Super Bowl contender and maybe even a Super Bowl favorite, or were 2 weeks ago. Brock Purdy said to him after the game, "Your scheme is crazy." He doesn't know how to try and compete against that because it's very unique. He brings the pressure a lot. He's very, very aggressive, and it doesn't really matter what the names are on that Vikings defense. They just have guys that have a tenacity to them and an aggression that they go and they make plays. And they've done that through the first 3 weeks of the season. They held Houston to just a touchdown, a 34-7 victory for Minnesota over Houston. I don't care where the game is. I don't care what week it is. If people are healthy for Houston, they should not be losing 34-7. Like that just should not happen. And this is one of those games, and we kind of talked about it last week, where I go into this and I think I semi know what's going on in the NFL. But time and time again, every single week, there's at least one of these games, and there were a couple more of them this week, where it just proves that we know nothing. I know nothing about the NFL. It is a beautiful, beautiful thing where you can try and go and predict these things. But Minnesota has Sam Darnold as a MVP frontrunner. He leads the league with 8 passing touchdowns, a 117 passer rating. He has been essentially perfect for this Vikings offense. And they've had injuries. Jordan Addison, their second wide receiver, wasn't even playing. Aaron Jones, a 29-year-old running back that Green Bay essentially just tossed to the side, playing very well, scoring touchdowns for Minnesota. A defense that has continued to age and has drafted very poorly early on. They've had to, they cut their first-round pick from just 2 years ago in Lewis Sign. Just things have gone wrong, and it doesn't make sense, but the Vikings are very good, and that is an exciting game for Green Bay to look forward to next week. Jordan Love might be back for that one. You kind of hope he is, the way that Minnesota's playing, because they just went back-to-back weeks where they beat San Francisco, who I probably have as the best roster in the NFL, and Houston, a team who has the most young promise in the NFL. You can look at Houston's offense, and no, they didn't have Joe Mixon, but they had a solid backup running back in Cam Akers. You have 3 wide receivers there in Houston and a young fireball quarterback and some solid tight end play, a good offensive line, and they only scored 7 points against this Minnesota defense. So regardless of if you see a Malik Willis or a Jordan Love play, it is going to be tough for the Green Bay offense to score points. A lot of people have Jordan Love on the same level as C.J. Stroud for Houston. So regardless, it's going to be Love's first performance since Philly. He's just getting back into it. Yes, he practiced a couple of times last week. It'll be his first live game action for a couple of weeks. Or if he can't play, you're working with a backup quarterback once again that hasn't seen a lot of defensive schemes anyway. So it's just going to be a very tough game. Green Bay's defense is going to need to play well to try and go and take that spot at the top of the NFC North. But Sam Darnold, he is undergoing an MRI on his knee today. You saw him go down, I believe, in the third quarter yesterday. He went out for just one play and then came back and then played the rest of the game until Nick Mullins, the backup quarterback, came to kneel out at the end of the game. So I wouldn't put too much concern on it for any Vikings fans out there. But he is undergoing MRI, and we'll get news on that later today. We'll probably talk a little bit about that tomorrow. So Minnesota, surprising the heck out of me once again. A 34-7 win over the Houston Texans.